So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Transformer Prime, so let's start the series. Even though Naruto was a gadget whiz at the tender age of 12 and preferred to spend his time indoors working on gadgets, it had always been enjoyable for him to go for walks in the outdoors and enjoy the scenery. Due to his mother's work as an Air Force pilot, he and his mother had recently relocated into a new home in Jasper, Nevada, the middle of nowhere. Even though he didn't think it was a very prestigious job for an ace pilot like his mom, she had told him that it was a very well-paying job for a simple and easy one. She had been transferred to work under a man named William Fowler, a slightly overweight African-American man who had served as an Army Ranger and now ran a new and secret department of the government. Naruto didn't know what the department did because it was a secret section of the government, but he knew that his mother was his chauffeur. As a result, even though he believed she was overqualified for the position, he was able to accept her having one. It also allowed him to spend more time with his mother, who is the most important person in his life. In any case, he was outfitted in a jacket, brown hiking boots, basic pants, and a bag that had his laptop, water, and some food as he walked along a route in a deep canyon that was well known for Jasper and its many mesas. He was strolling along in search of a suitable spot to rest when he sensed an inward tug urging him to answer it. He noticed that his hands were shining a vivid blue, so he took out his phone to check it out. He also noticed that his eyes were glowing blue, which he attributed to the energon power that had run in his family for more than a century. He made the decision to follow this instinct and allow it lead him to whatever it was that was calling to him, pulling and guiding him to discover it and perhaps offering assistance if necessary. All he knew was that he was going to follow this feeling, regardless of how far or how long he went. He simply strolled, allowing the sensation to pull and lead him, making sure he could find his way back once it was over. When he finally reached the canyon's bottom, he saw, if he had to guess, a massive metal mausoleum. It was enormous, far larger than any home in Jasper. It appeared to have sharply patterned metal parts that overlapped one another, all of which were centered on a single symbol. In certain ways, it resembled a humanoid face composed of bars and lines, but Naruto knew better. He had seen that emblem for as long as he could remember, along with another that looked to represent a stoic protector but was, in contrast, pointed and dangerous. It had to do with the beginnings of his family's energon-related skills and was one of the emblems that had been handed down through the generations. He could see that the pulling feeling he was experiencing was coming from the enormous tomb as he gazed up at it. He was unsure of what it wanted from him, but he suspected he would soon learn. He approached the enormous tomb, put his hand there, and waited for something to happen. Nothing happened at first, and then nothing happened at all. Naruto chose to stand with his palm on the tomb for 5 minutes before deciding to step back and reflect. Once he arrived, the draw lessened and he regained complete control over his body. After this, the energon in his body had subsided and returned to its sleep until its user called upon it. Given that, is it not conceivable that he required the energon to be active in order to open the tomb? That's just what he did, summoning the vast store of unadulterated energy that was inside him. A blue flame-like aura surrounded his entire body, radiating approximately half a foot away from him, and he began to glow blue with the power. This time, it wasn't just his hands and eyes. When Naruto returned to the tomb and touched it with the power that had been in his family's lineage for generations, the response was very different. The jagged metal plates began to retract into themselves, beginning where his hand had been and moving into the tomb's walls to create a massive entrance for the tomb's opening, which was roughly 15 feet high, was clearly intended for something considerably bigger than Naruto or any potential human present or ancient. Naruto entered the dim, cavern-like tomb to discover why he had been drawn here after the doorway had fully opened. When he first entered, he realized why he had been summoned to this tomb, which was evidently millions of years old but still a millennium ahead of anything that had been or could be created on Earth. The enormous metal figure had a humanoid shape, was mostly blue, and had sharp little wings underneath it in addition to massive jets on its back. It had an overall aspect as though it was constructed to handle anything, and its face was yellowish-orange in color. Check out the profile photo for this article or search for Nominus Prime to get a better idea of what it looks like. Being the 5-foot even 12-year-old that he was, Naruto was somewhat unable to approach the metal giant, who was resting on a massive metal slab that was elevated roughly 10 feet off the ground. But because he was a technological genius and an extremely athletic 12-year-old, he was able to ascend to the top of the metal platform, where the metal monster was. Naruto then retreated a short distance to gain momentum before taking off. He was fortunate that the metal plates that comprised the entire tomb were not bladed and just had sharp outlines, since he leaped and grasped onto them as soon as he was about 6 inches off the platform. Naruto began climbing up the platform after noticing that he had jumped up almost 2.5 feet, setting a new personal record. The final 8 minutes weren't particularly enjoyable because it took him roughly 15 minutes to get to the summit, and by the 7-minute mark his arms were beginning to burn and shake. Naruto simply fell to the ground after reaching the top, lying on his back while gasping and attempting to get rid of the jelly sensation in his arms. That he sat up and stood up to examine the mammoth in greater detail after he had stopped panting and his arms were less sore. He acknowledged that he was already aware of the giant's status as a scientific and technological marvel, but seeing it up close and being able to examine it in greater depth just whoa. All of that the giant's locking mechanisms implied that it could change its shape while simultaneously enabling it to withstand incredibly powerful blows while in its humanoid form, remain nimble and able to quickly avoid strikes, and instantly transform into any other form it might have. The very notion of what the behemoth was capable of was astounding, particularly if someone with bad intentions managed to obtain it and exploited the technology the robot possessed simply by existing, regardless of whether it was functional. Naruto had a suspicion that the gang known as M.C.H. was not good because he had heard rumors on various internet forums that they were taking cutting-edge technology for their own purposes. In any case, the robot appeared to be in reasonably good shape, albeit devoid of life, as seen by its tomb, body design, and armaments. Naruto then approached its head and began searching for an access point so he could connect his laptop to it and check on its condition. He ultimately discovered a way to enter its head, and after using a stray piece of metal on the same platform as the robot to force it open, he searched inside and attempted to locate a plug-in. Finding several points into its memory core wasn't difficult, but they all had strange appearances and most likely wouldn't link to his computer. He chose to do something he had only heard about in legends, making solid structures out of the energon in his body, that his forefathers were supposed to be able to do and his mother could do to a lesser degree. It was rumored that his forefathers had brilliant blue weaponry that could cut through nearly anything. His mother was also capable of doing this, although she primarily utilized it to save money on pots and pans and cooking utensils. Additionally, whenever Naruto did something truly foolish and attempted to evade his mother's terrible, extremely painful punishments, he would occasionally be chained in a myriad of chains. Thus, Naruto climbed inside the robot's head and examined the access point inside. When he finally believed he had a good grasp on the access point's shape, he activated his energon. He concentrated on the form of the access point and the connection that connected it to his computer within his head. He was unsure of how long he sat there, but it seemed like a long time. He just concentrated on the access point's shape, and then he sensed it. He felt a weight in his palms that was composed of the energon inside of him. It became longer and heavier until it finally stopped. When Naruto opened his eyes and peered down into his hands, he noticed a glowing blue cord with a USB connector on the other end that was shaped to fit into the robot's access point. He was amazed that he had succeeded in creating an energon construct at the age of 12, although his mother had to reach 16 to accomplish the same feat, and she was praised as a prodigy in their family. That he kept staring at the construction until the reason he had put it together in the first place suddenly came back to him. After inserting the end that connected to the robot into the access point and feeling it slide into position and remain securely there, he took the end that connected to the USB port on his computer and plugged it in. He flipped open his computer and examined the image that appeared on the screen as soon as he opened it. Naruto could see most of the images, and it appeared that the robot had once been a very significant figure. However, he saw something that shattered the perception of this robot as a noble and kind ruler. He realized that the reason he was the leader of his race was due to something they kept calling the Matrix. But then he saw an image that demonstrated that the robot had created the Matrix himself out of self-interest. In order to obtain power, prestige, and to subjugate his planet's lower-class system, he deceived the populace into believing that they had a wise and just leader who had been selected by their ancient leaders. He then took all of the faith that the populace had placed in him and utterly destroyed it. At that point, Naruto made the decision to rebuild the robot without reviving the life force that had previously existed within it. Even if he is not God, it would be preferable in this situation if the life that had previously existed inside of it was not revived. Though Naruto was aware that the mind must be left in the emptiness of the afterlife, the body might and would need to be restored to functional form. After deciding that it was time to get to work, he got up and began assessing what needed to be fixed and replaced. About 5 years had passed since Naruto discovered the body of the person he had discovered to be Nominus Prime. Whenever he thought about Nominus, he would always enclose the title of Prime in quotation marks. He had appropriated his planet's most revered title and exploited it for his own self-interest. He had been working on fixing the robot's body whenever he could since the day he discovered Nominus. So far, it had gone quite well, and he had made some pretty excellent progress on rebuilding the bot's body as best he could. The body didn't require much repair because it was in rather good shape, but the repairs that were required were difficult and time-consuming, even though they would have been nearly impossible without his energon. The most challenging aspect thus far, however, has been Naruto's attempt to determine how he would operate the robot after he had had him completely fixed. He believed that he could pilot from inside, but given how many parts move when the robot changes, at least according to the diagnosis and computer scenarios, he considered creating a psychic link between himself and the empty body, but the necessary technology was out of his and the planet's reach. He wasn't willing to die on his computer, even if it turned out to be incorrect. He was therefore limited to ensuring that the body was operational for the time when he eventually figured out how to pilot it. Naruto had changed significantly over the previous 2 years. He was now at least 5 feet 10 inches tall, and his continual hiking to Nominus' tomb and lifting large metal parts to repair Nominus' body had given him a lean, strong build. He was wearing a black jacket over a red t-shirt, and on the back of the jacket was a swirl seal that represented his family's last name. He was also wearing black pants and red chucks. Whirlpool, Uzumaki Naruto also turned 16 during those 5 years, making him 17 currently, thus it goes without saying that he wanted to drive. He obtained his license as soon as he was allowed to legally do so, but he and his mother were unable to purchase a new or used vehicle for themselves. Naruto made the prudent decision to work at a nearby electronics store across the street from a fast food restaurant, reasoning that since he was skilled at something, he might as well be compensated for it. Even after a year or so of working at the shop, he was still far from being able to purchase any kind of wheels. Apart from that, not much had changed in his life. His mother continued to work hard at a job that was beneath her skill level, but she was still the best mother he could ask for. Naruto had to acknowledge that he was rarely bored and that he could usually find something to do when he was, but today was not one of those days. At the electronics store where he worked, it was a dull day. Nobody needed new headphones or computer repairs. He had nothing to do, but fortunately his 5-hour shift was nearly over, just 3, 2, and 1 hours left, and he was officially off. It's time to leave, check if his mother is home, and persuade her to have ramen for supper tonight. As he was leaving after informing his supervisor that his shift was finished and that he would be spending the night at home, he opened the door and went to bed after hearing a groan from the back room, which served as his boss's office. When he was something, he glanced across the street at the fast food burger place, considering buying a milkshake before riding his skateboard home. A stunning dark blue Suzuki motorcycle that was sleek and appeared to be designed for speed, with a 0 to 60 startup time of just a few seconds. He noted a few things as he was enjoying the motorcycle. First, he sensed energizing energy emanating from the bike. Second, the person riding it had no clothes on. While traveling at a speed of around 25 miles per hour, not very fast, but enough to cause a slight flutter from any clothing. And third, he saw it. He saw the Autobot's emblem, which was tiny and invisible unless you knew what to look for and were constantly alert. He observed the one thing that definitively reinforced his suspicions when the motorcycle and its rider turned into the fast food restaurant's parking lot. The rider abruptly vanished. The opportunity to finally see a Cybertronian face to, headlights? In any case, having made up his mind, he approached the motorcycle directly. As soon as he did, he was genuinely impressed by the vehicle form that the Cybertronian had selected. It was svelte and swift, and it also had a somewhat unobtrusive appearance. He looked down at the motorcycle as he approached it and said the one thing that would hopefully cause an immediate response. "Never thought I would see a Cybertronian here in good old middle of nowhere Jasper, Nevada," he stated. He anticipated some sort of response, such as incredulity, perhaps amusement, or perhaps rage at being discovered by a human in some way, but he was not prepared for the response he received. "What did you say, human?" he heard from the motorcycle. It sounded feminine. Nominus had seen a few female Cybertronians in his recollections, but not many, so this was a unique occasion. "I said that I never thought I would see a Cybertronian in the middle of a small town out in the middle of nowhere," he responded. He heard her respond in a chilly tone that was full of rage, frustration, and a hint of sadness. "Listen to me, human. I don't know what you think you're doing by talking to me or even how you have knowledge of my race, but for your safety I suggest that you just walk away and forget about ever seeing me." "Odd. Sorry, I can't do that. Me and my family have been searching for you guys for over 100 generations. I'm not letting you get away without helping me understand something that I need to figure out." He could tell that the Autobot was about to respond to the strange comment with a cold remark with the intent of getting him to leave her alone, when suddenly she stopped. Naruto was confused. He had just met this Autobot, but he could already tell that she was a strong, albeit small, warrior that wasn't used to not being listened to and very strong-willed in any situation. Confused as to why she had stopped before she could retort to his comment, he started to look around the parking lot. Not seeing anything, he turned around and looked out onto the street about 60 yards away, and that's when he saw them, sleek purple and black cars that all looked the same. As he continued to inspect the cars, he saw the one thing that he hoped that was just a scare tactic devised by the adults of the family to get the children to listen to their parents and other adults. He saw the symbol that was feared and told to beware of in his family. He saw the symbol of the Decepticons, fuck/scrap. He and the Autobot said at the same time, "What do we do?" he questioned in a troubled tone as he turned around and gazed down at her. "Nothing, you leave and they'll follow me and we'll never see each other again," she shot back in a hurry. He was about to tell her that he would go, but that he would find her again and they would have that conversation when he noticed the Decepticons turn into the burger place's parking lot. "Scrap, okay, get on, we need to get out of here," she said. He nodded mainly to himself as he backed up and got onto the disguised Autobot, gripping the handlebars tightly, ready for anything. As soon as he got on and was holding on, he felt himself begin moving at incredible speeds towards the cons. Just as they were about to hit, they served in between two cons and fled as quickly as they could. While maintaining a firm grip on the handlebars, Naruto turned around after about 5 minutes to check if they were being followed. When he saw that they weren't, he sighed with relief. A few more minutes later, he noticed that they were turning into an alley. Once they were safely inside the alley, he dismounted the Autobot and stepped back. When he was away, he witnessed her change into her actual form. She was nearly as tall as the buildings that surrounded them, dark blue with a light pink headpiece, feminine looking for a robot, and appeared to have been built with stealth in mind. He had to confess that he liked her form better than Nominus. After she had finished changing, she knelt down in front of him, bringing their height difference as close to eye as possible, and said, "My name is RC, member of the Autobots, and I would like to know how you know of my kind." When Naruto saw the Autobot RC glaring at him angrily, he cleverly said, what?" Although Naruto is all about adventure and living life to the fullest, he didn't think that avoiding an irate female Autobot's foot would be a good way to try and start a relationship with the Autobots because he didn't answer her questions. "You heard me, human, how do you know of my race?" she repeated. Naruto could tell that she wanted an answer right away or he might be stepped on. She narrowed her eyes at him in disbelief and suspicion at what he was telling her. "Well, I know of you guys from a couple of ways, but the most prominent one is from stories that have been passed down in my family for generations," he said as quickly as he could to avoid being squashed. She explained, "We'll talk more about this, but first I think that we should go back to my base so my leader can hear about this," as she got back up and changed back into a motorcycle. Naruto nodded, climbed on top of her, and clung to her, praying that the tales his family had told him about the Autobots being gentle protectors were accurate. They took off again as soon as he got on, but this time they continued driving all the way out of town and into the desert. Naruto noticed that the sun was beginning to set, so he took his phone out of his pocket and checked the time. He realized that it was almost 8, and his curfew was 9. He needed to call his mother right away to let her know that he might be home late, so he put his phone back in his pocket and turned back to the road when he heard RC say something into a radio to her team. "Ratchet, I could use a ground bridge, also tell Optimus that he'll want to see and hear what our guest has to say," she said into the comm. He heard an elderly and worn-out voice over RC's communication systems. "RC, what are you talking about? What guest? Did you find another one of our comrades?" "No, I'm afraid that I haven't. Let's just say that I met a human of interest, and I'm taking him in to talk to Optimus because of a comment he made," she responded to her fellow soldier. He said, "Ugh, humans, very well, locking onto your coordinates, now," as a swirling green portal appeared directly in front of them. Naruto was astounded by the swirling greens and blues that comprised the portal as soon as they entered, and the brief 15 seconds that they spent inside were amazing. and he could tell that this was only the first of the incredible sights he would be witnessing. Soon he and RC exited the portal and stopped in what looked like an old hollowed-out weapons silo for the U.S. Armed Forces, although Naruto could tell that this place was more advanced than anything that the army had. He continued to look around and saw more bots with the sigils of their affiliation with the Autobots. He saw a yellow and black sleek bot that looked like he transformed into a Mustang. He also saw a green Goliath that looked like he could wreck anything. He noticed over by the advanced computer network there was a grizzled old-looking bot that was colored white and red. He had the heart monitor lines on his arm that suggested that he was a medic and transformed into an ambulance. Naruto turned to the left and saw a red bot that had a pair of horns with a cocky smirk leaning against the wall. As soon as he saw Naruto he gave him a two-finger wave. And finally Naruto turned his head to the right when he felt a pull similar to that of which he had felt when he had found the tomb of Nominus, only this time the pull was stronger and screamed a worthy leader that lead by example and not just by title. This bot was the tallest out of them all and was colored in a blue, red, and chrome color scheme. He carried himself with honor and yet in a way that suggested he had seen many battles and was ready to act at a moment's notice. RC reverted to her humanoid form and remarked, "Well, looks like the gang's all here." The towering guy who he thought was the boss responded, "Indeed RC, and I see you brought a guest with you of human origin." After responding, "Humans, bah," the elderly, grizzled medic resumed his work on their sophisticated machines. Naruto simply stood there in awe as the leader introduced himself. "My name is Optimus Prime, leader of the Autobots being from the planet Cybertron many light years away. I welcome you to our home," he said. He could feel a thrumming that connected with the energon inside his body, and he exuded a sense of leadership. He could see the shock on Optimus's face and hear the gasp from all the other Autobots in the room as they processed what he had just said. "It is nice to meet you, Optimus Prime. I never thought I would see the day that I would meet the bot that holds the matrix of leadership within them. I had all but given up hope on there ever being a truly worthy successor of Primus and the original 13s will empower," Naruto said. They were shocked to learn that a human was aware of the matrix and appeared unsurprised by the sight of enormous robots. Additionally, the way this human spoke gave the impression that he knew something that they did not, even if they were still unaware of it. How could a human possess such knowledge about his race and one of their most revered relics? Optimus Prime remarked, "This is a great surprise. I never thought that a human would be taking our existence so well, and even have knowledge of the matrix that I hold within me." "Yes, well, you learn a lot when you have lived the life that I have," Naruto remarked, acknowledging that the circumstance was peculiar from all perspectives but his own. Optimus gave the order, "Tell me your name, human, and your tale so I may understand how you know of my people's existence and of one of the most sacred relics of our planet," as his voice seemed to veer slightly in the direction of this seemingly knowledgeable human. "It would be my pleasure, Optimus Prime. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and my tale starts many generations ago," Naruto said, looking up at Optimus with a look of knowing respect. Optimus was surprised by the respect a human teenager was showing him, using his full title and saying it with a hint of awe. Naruto then told the Autobots how one day while hiking, he felt a pull that led him to a Cybertronian tomb containing the remains of Nominus Prime, how he watched the memories inside Nominus Memory Center and how he learned about their culture and relics. How he saw how Nominus lied about his title as a prime and used it for his own selfish gains, how he decided to repair Nominus' body in the hopes of using it to protect the planet if the Decepticons ever returned to Earth, and finally, how he met RC up to this point. Even the always stoic, composed, and in control Optimus had his mouth open in shock and awe at what they had just been told. He was certain that Ratchet would have called Naruto a liar and that everything he had said had been made up, but everything he had said either had evidence to support the claims or could be proven. The Autobots were all stunned by what they had just been told, and it took them a few minutes to process the information. Optimus still stared at the human in front of him. "That is quite a story, Naruto. I would say that it would be impossible for a human to know all of this, but obviously that statement would not be true," he stated. Suddenly Ratchet stepped up when he realized something that Naruto had said. "Naruto, what you said about you and your family being able to create energon in your body and control it, is that true?" Ratchet inquired in a giddy tone. Naruto looked from Optimus over to him and smiled at him as he held up his hand and summoned upon the energon inside of his body. As soon as he did, a bright blue glow shot up from it and about a foot into the air. As soon as he summoned upon his energon, Ratchet grabbed what looked like a scanner and held it down to Naruto as he took readings from his hand. What Ratchet saw astounded him. The readings were off the scale. With the amount that he was putting out right now, they could power the ground bridge for months. Plus Naruto didn't even look tired, he looked as if he was holding back actually. Based on the preliminary reading he was getting and from what he could see on Naruto's face, he guessed that Naruto could power and supply them with energon for years if he let loose just once in a controlled environment where all the energon he was putting off could be absorbed. Ratchet told Optimus, "Optimus, the amount he's putting out right now could power the ground bridge for months." As Optimus looked down at Naruto and scratched his chin in surprise, awe, and happiness at what he was seeing from this human. Naruto was grinning with joy at being complimented on something, and the advantage he could give them over the Decepticons was astounding. The only problem was what would happen if the cons discovered Naruto and managed to get their hands on him. As Ratchet performed some scans on Naruto, the other members of Team Prime got to know him, and Optimus simply stood there considering their options. Optimus said, "Naruto, I would like to ask you a favor. We are in dire need of energon, and the amount that you just put off preliminarily was staggering and could help us in our fight against the Decepticons. Would you be willing to help us in a time of need?" He didn't want to put Naruto in danger, but he had already been spotted by some Decepticon grunts, and they undoubtedly took a picture of him. If Naruto collaborated with them, they could at least protect him while he provided them with energon to help end this war. Optimus looked at Naruto with a grin. "I would be glad to help. My family has spent generations trying to find you to get your help and see if we can help you in your war against the Decepticons. All I ask in return is that you help me finish repairs on the body of Nominus so I can use it to help you fight and help me find a way to pilot said body. So do we have a deal?" asked Naruto. After giving it some more thought, Optimus decided that if he agreed, they would receive nearly limitless energon, another fighter in the shape of a liar to their race, and, if he recalled correctly, Nominus's ability to change into a Cybertronian jet, which would help level the playing field because they lacked aerial support against the Decepticons. Optimus Prime asked Naruto Uzumaki, "Very well, Naruto, I will accept your proposal, but after we finish repairing Nominus' body for you to use in battle while we are out in the field, I expect you to listen to every order I give to the letter. Also you must have a member of the team with you at all times while outside the base. So do we have a deal?" He leaned down and held out a finger for Naruto to shake in order to seal the deal. Without even thinking, Naruto immediately put up his hand and grabbed the outstretched finger as he and Optimus shook and shouted with his famous foxy grin, "Deal." It had been an eventful day for Naruto, especially considering he had met the legendary heroes his family had told stories about for generations. After he had been let go from Ratchet's constant probing and questions about how much energon he could generate and whatnot, he told them that he had to go so his mom wouldn't kill him for being out so late without telling his mom, since the Autobot base was guarded against incoming and outgoing signals that hadn't been adapted to allow them to pass by the shielding. When he was ready to leave, Optimus had come up to him and told him he had to have one of the Autobots go with him to make sure that he stayed safe should the Decepticons find out about his existence. With that, Optimus had turned around and pointed to the red bot who he had learned was named Cliff Jumper and told him to go with Naruto and act as his guardian. With that, Cliff had transformed had Naruto get in and they left through the ground bridge that Ratchet had opened. It hadn't taken them long for them to arrive at Naruto's house. And luckily before his mom got home, as they pulled up into the driveway of the house, Naruto turned to Cliff Jumper and asked him, "So what's your role on the Autobot team?" When Cliff Jumper answered, "I'm an awesome badass warrior," Naruto could hear the smug sneer in his voice as he filled in the energon-generating human. Naruto turned away, grinning at his guardian's words, and proceeded to the house to sleep. "Hey Cliff, don't change yet because it's probably my mom if you see another car pull into the driveway in order to avoid getting his mother involved in the conflict and having her force him to stop seeing Team Prime because of the danger," Naruto asked the warrior to keep the news of his discovery of the Autobots a secret for the time being. "Yeah sure Naruto, whatever you want, but if that car transforms and starts blasting my paint job all bets are off," responded Cliff Jumper. Nodding, Naruto opened the door to his house and walked in. As soon as he entered, he took off his jacket and hung it up on the rung by the front door and kicked off his shoes and started his way upstairs towards his room. The house that he lived in with his mom wasn't big by any standard, but it was comfortable and had 2 stories, which he loved when he was younger since their first house was only 1 story and he'd always wanted to live in a house with stairs. The top floor held his room, his mom's room, a linen closet for towels and such, and finally a medium-sized bathroom with a toilet, a decent-sized sink, a shower/bathtub combo that took up most of the space. The bathroom was next to the linen closet with the bedrooms just a few feet past that. Naruto's room was on the left, whereas the bathroom and closet were on the right, and his mom's room was at the very back of the hallway, allowing for it to have more space to be a proper master bedroom. After walking past the bathroom, he finally reached his bedroom and opened the door and walked inside to go to sleep after a long and hectic day. At one point in the night, Naruto woke up when his mother had arrived home, kissed him on the forehead, and apologized for being home so late. She mumbled, "I love you too," and then got up from her spot on the floor and left the room, shutting his door behind her. Naruto thought for a moment why she hadn't inquired about the red muscle car in the driveway, but before he could fully consider the possible answers, he fell back asleep. Naruto awoke at 9 a.m. on Sunday. He awoke to the sound of a honking horn that was coming from the front of the house, where he saw what looked like a red roof of a car. After getting up and opening the window, he saw that the car that was honking was actually Cliff Jumper, and it seemed like he was waiting for him to get the hell up and get ready so they could head to the Autobot base. Naruto looked down at Cliff and made a motion that showed he would need a few minutes to get ready. After a revving of the engine from Cliff Jumper, Naruto closed the window, turned around and started to gather some clean clothes for him to wear after he was done with his shower. As Naruto was walking the few needed feet to the bathroom, he heard his mom's CPAP machine making its intake and exhaling noises. The reason his mom even used the damn thing was because her snoring was so bad that when they had first moved to Jasper, after a few nights of her snoring, they started to get complaints from neighbors about the strange growling noises they were hearing at night and how it was keeping them up at night. After another week of snoring, the entire neighborhood had gathered and gotten a court order from the city for Kushina to get a CPAP machine so that they all could get some sleep finally, and thus the CPAP machine had been introduced into their lives. With Kushina's begrudging usage, they hadn't gotten a single complaint about her noisy snoring since. As Naruto stood in the shower, allowing the water to run down his body, he couldn't help but wonder why Cliff Jumper had woken him up so early so they could get to the Autobot base. He fervently hoped it wasn't so Ratchet could test him further. Perhaps they were going to do something else, like go find some Decepticons and smash their heads. Whatever they were going to do, he had better move quickly before Cliff Jumper started honking his horn once more and woke up his mother from her well-earned sleep so he could try to find out what was causing the noise and crush it like a ball of tin foil for disturbing her. After turning off the water, Naruto began drying his body and hair before putting on his day's clothes. "What the hell took you so long, kid? I've been waiting for 10 minutes, said Cliffjumper irritably as Naruto, with his hair slightly damp, left the house wearing a black shirt, another pair of black jeans, an orange and black tracksuit jacket with his family crest on the back in red, Shippuden jacket, unzipped, and black combat boots. "Shut up, it's not like I knew at what time you wanted me to wake up, so you woke me up on a Saturday, and I only get to sleep in on the weekends, so lay off, and me taking 10 minutes is actually pretty good, just be glad I'm not a human girl my age who takes ages to get ready," Naruto responded with a casual demeanor, not seeing the big deal. A/N, for the comment about girls taking a long time, I'm just basing this on the number of girls who arrived late to my first hour when I was in school, and from what my female friends have told me, I'm sorry if I offended anyone. With Naruto buckled in Cliffjumper, they reversed out of the parking lot and began to head towards the edge of town so they could ground bridge without being noticed by the rest of the population. After driving for about 25 minutes, they were far enough out of town for Cliffjumper to ask for a ground bridge. "Hey Ratchet, can you hook a bot up with a ground bridge to base?" Sif asked, and with a slight groan from his communications, they drove through a ground bridge that appeared 10 feet ahead of them. Naruto was still amazed that the Autobots had this kind of technology at their disposal, even though it was the third time he had done so. After a few seconds, they emerged from the other end of the portal into the base, and Naruto got out of the bot and looked around once more in awe of the size of the place. It could house all of the Autobots and anything else they might need. As he was looking around, Cliffjumper changed right behind him and began to approach Ratchet, asking, "So what's the word, Doc?" Ratchet responded, "Optimus wants you to go out and scan some areas for any sign of Energon," as he started entering the coordinates for Cliffjumper's fuel run assignment. Cliffjumper threw his arms and head back in agony, refusing to move. "Why do I need to go out and search for Energon? We got the kid now and he can create tons of Energon," he said. Cliffjumper was whining when Optimus entered the main room of the base. "While it is true that our new human ally has the ability to produce Energon, we must always be searching for Energon deposits if for no other reason so the Decepticons do not get their hands on them," Optimus stated. Cliffjumper answered, "Yes sir, can I at least take the kid or RC with me to make it a little more bearable," attempting to pass the time alone in the hopes of enlisting his partner to suffer with him or, at the very least, the child he was protecting, so they could bond and get to know one another a little better. "While I would like to allow the backup you requested, RC is on her own recon mission right now and unfortunately won't be back until later. As for our young human ally Ratchet, me, and young Naruto are going to go see what we can do about repairing the body of Nominus so that Naruto may begin to aid us as soon as possible in our endeavors," replied Optimus in a tone of regret. As he changed and began to crank his engine a little in preparation, Cliffjumper remarked, "Fine, open her up Ratchet." As the ground bridge opened and Cliffjumper drove through, Naruto said, "Be careful, Cliffjumper. I wouldn't want to lose my guardian so soon after getting him." When Cliffjumper had gone and the ground bridge had closed, Naruto turned to Optimus and said, "So you need me to give you the coordinates to Nominus' tomb?" Optimus held Ratchet's hand in a presenting manner and stated, "That would be helpful, my young friend. Just tell Ratchet the coordinates and we will ground bridge there." Ratchet was waiting for the tomb's coordinates next to their main computer interface. With a nod, Naruto approached Ratchet and began to give him the coordinates that would bring them very close to the Phony Prime's tomb. Once he had the coordinates, Ratchet turned to Optimus and asked, "Who will run the ground bridge while we are away?" "I will ask Bumblebee to return to base. He is just a few clicks away and should be able to operate it while we are away," Optimus said, and Ratchet nodded in agreement, deeming the ground bridge's temporary worker acceptable. The scout, who is vocally disabled, was young and active enough to handle the ground bridge should the need arise. Ratchet then set the timer for the space bridge to close a few seconds after they got out of it, and as Optimus transformed, he opened his door to let Naruto in so the young, energon-infused human could accompany him. By the time Naruto had climbed up and gotten into the driver's seat, the portal had opened and was calling them to enter. With that, they started their journey to the body of a fake prime and great deceiver so that he could do good after death. After exiting the portal and having Naruto give them directions to them tomb since they were still a ways away, they finally reached the great metal tomb. Naruto hopped out of Optimus as he and Ratchet transformed. The tomb was sealed so that no one other than Naruto or someone who had access to a large energon cube could enter. Naruto walked up to the tomb and placed his hand on the tomb and called upon the vast quantities of energon inside his body and focused it into the tomb's door to open it up. After a second, the door started to open by having the metal plates that made up the door start to retract, starting from where his hand had been and moving outward so that beings much larger than him could walk through and view the deceased Cybertronian. After the metal plates had settled, Naruto beckoned Optimus and Ratchet come in as he started to walk inside. After a few steps, Ratchet and Optimus came upon the body on the giant metal slab, the body of Nominus Prime, the former leader of their people and one of the original Cybertronians killed in the first waves of Decepticon violence. Naruto looked up at them as they took in the sight of their former leader. I know this is kinda a heavy moment, but could you maybe lift me up onto slab so I can show you what I've been able to complete in repairs?" he asked in a soft voice. After Naruto had said something, the two Autobots seemed to snap out of their trance and Optimus knelt down with his hand open to allow their human companion to get a ride up to the burial slab. Ratchet said, his body seems in fairly good condition considering he was believed killed in an explosion," as he started to scan the body to determine which systems needed to be replaced or fixed. Once he finished scanning, he discovered that only a small number of systems needed to be replaced or fixed in order for the body to be functional for their new ally. Naruto stepped over to the bot and stroked his years-long handiwork, saying, "Yeah, when I found him he looked pretty good except for a few broken pieces of armor that I was able to fix with some energon welding. Yes, that would explain some of the irregularities in the armor that I found that showed they were being held together in a way that wouldn't allow them to come off again unless under extreme stress." "Interesting," Ratchet said, turning to his leader after completing his body scan. "It seems that we have everything we need to fix Nominus' body at the base Optimus," he reported. After grabbing Nominus's body and throwing one arm over his shoulder, Optimus said, "Good. Let's load up the body and start to head home." Ratchet then held out his hand for Naruto to jump on, and the group began to exit the tomb. "Bumblebee, we need a ground bridge at our current location," Optimus said as he accessed his communications. A ground bridge opened up not far ahead, and the group began to head through as the tomb closed itself back up after they had left its confines. Optimus placed Nominus's body on an operating table near the energon tank at the rear of the base's main area. Ratchet had put his hand on the human walking area while he was doing this so Naruto could get off and he could resume his regular tasks and start thinking of what to do with the body that was now on his operating table. Suddenly, a beep beep sounded, and when he looked up, he realized that it was a warning that one of their team members was in danger because a sudden drop in their life signal was detected. Hoping it was a glitch with this blasted human technology, but when he looked up, he realized it wasn't, and his spark fell in fear. When Naruto noticed the terrified expression on Ratchet's face, he rushed as close to the grizzled medbot as he could and questioned, "What's happening, Ratchet?" Ratchet remarked, "Optimus, you need to see this," disregarding the person in front of him who was leaning over the safety railing to try to get a glimpse of the display. Optimus approached his old friend and glanced at the monitor, his face taking on a worried expression. Optimus approached the Team Scout and told him to start preparing for combat. Have all outgoing Autobots return to base, one of our own is in need of help, he remarked. Since he hadn't heard back from Ratchet and was starting to worry, Naruto said, Optimus, what's wrong, why do the others need to come back to base? It's Cliff Jumper, his life signal is dropping rapidly, remarked Optimus, turning to face him with concern. Fearing what he thought would be the response, Naruto questioned, what does that mean? It means that Cliff Jumper is gravely injured from fighting Decepticons, replied Optimus.